Hello everyone. Now you will hear a brief retelling of the movie Reminiscence. Enjoy the movie. The novel is set in the not-too-distant future in Miami, Florida, where climate change has produced severe flooding and searing heat. The city has shrunk to the size of a dime, with many citizens compelled to conduct their businesses and other activities at night owing to the oppressive heat. Poverty is widespread, and some residents are forced to live in temporary slums or even on boats. People are urgently clinging to recollections of brighter times in this dismal and depressing world. Nick and Emily, both ex-soldiers, have created a one-of-a-kind company called Reminiscence Tank. Using sedatives and cutting-edge technology, this service allows users to relive their favorite moments. Nick may even imagine and share their experiences in holographic form, adding to the bizarre experience. The picture then turns to Nick's army buddy, Hank, who is utilizing the Reminiscence service. Nick transports him back 13 years to a beautiful day when he was playing with his beloved pet dog. Nick defines the sense of reminiscence as a potent medication that helps individuals to reconnect with their loved ones and relive the most crucial events of their lives, like Hank relives this beloved memory. However, Nick warns that overindulging in these memories may develop into a deadly addiction, locking individuals in their past and depriving them of the present. Finally, Nick adds that every memory experienced by consumers through the Reminiscence Tank is saved on little flash drives, emphasizing the hazards inherent with this service. Later that night, as Nick and Emily prepare to close their shop for the day, a walk-in client called May asks for assistance in locating her misplaced keys. Nick is immediately drawn to May and, despite Emily's warning that it is too late, he resolves to assist her. He doesn't waste any time in outfitting her with the equipment and immersing her in a recollection of her morning routine. While May is analyzing her memories, Nick observes them and notices details in her room. Emily informs him that May placed the keys in her suitcase and left them in the dressing room. Despite this, Nick pursues the recollection and discovers that May is a nightclub singer. May leaves after the session, but she mistakenly leaves her earrings behind. The following night, Nick returns to the same nightclub from May's memories with the express intention of returning her earrings. He approaches May after her performance and the two have a brief conversation. May unexpectedly insists that he accompany her to her apartment after he returns her earrings. Nick, who has already been taken aback by her beauty, accepts without hesitation. And as soon as the two go home, they fall in love. Nick and May had a heart-to-heart talk on the rooftop following their intimate meeting. May wonders why Nick doesn't use the memory tank more frequently, to which Nick responds that memories are best in tiny doses. Suddenly, it is revealed that Nick has spent the whole time in the recollection tank, thinking about May. Everything was a figment of his imagination. Emily attempts to get Nick out of the tank, but he can't quit thinking about his ideal lady. May abruptly vanished a few months ago, and Nick is now trying to figure out where she is by repeatedly utilizing the Reminiscence Tank. He pays repeated trips to the club where she used to work and approaches her former co-workers for leads, but to no effect. When nothing else works, Nick takes a sedative and reminisces about May. He once awoke to a loud hammering on his front door. Nick, frustrated and half asleep, rants aggressively at the person on the other end of the line before going out to face them. When he opens the door, he finds no one but a pair of earrings on the ground. Nick discovers the earrings belong to his ex-girlfriend May and informs Emily. She, on the other hand, ignores it, claiming that the earrings may have been there for a long time. Later, the two go to the police station to extract memories from Miles, a dying criminal. Nick is unable to obtain valuable information until he alters his strategy and discovers a discussion between Miles' employer, St. Joe, and a corrupt officer called Cyrus Booth. They're in a nightclub, and May, to their surprise, is singing. She looks to be under the influence of something. As the recollection develops, Nick learns that May took a bag of drugs from St. Joe and fled. The next day, Nick flies to New Orleans and enters St. Joe's club under a false name. Joe, however, sees through his falsehoods and instructs his guys to beat him up. Joe discloses that he hasn't seen May since she stole from him when Nick finally admits that he's come to locate her. He then directs his thugs to drown Nick. Things look gloomy for our protagonist until Emily appears out of nowhere and begins battling the men. Despite being outnumbered, she performs each and every one of them with pinpoint accuracy and saves the day. After they arrive in Miami, Nick expresses his dissatisfaction with the entire event. He feels May was only playing with him and that she took something from them. Emily believes he is being paranoid, but Nick reminds her of her previous meeting with May. He then invites her to enter the recollection tank to further study the subject. In the recollection, we see May come to see Emily with a bottle of wine before she departed. They discuss a variety of topics, including their relationships and families. May also admits to being a heavy narcotics user. When Emily walks to the restroom, May sneaks into the memory vault and grabs a memory chip. As soon as Emily steps out of the tank, she tries to explain herself for concealing May's drug addiction. Nick, on the other hand, dismisses it and hurries to the memory vault. After some investigation, he discovers that the memory chip of a young woman, Elsa Karain, is missing. Elsa was a regular customer who had also gone missing a few weeks before. The next day, Nick travels to a floating market in pursuit of Elsa, only to discover that she is no longer alive. Furthermore, her child, Freddie, was taken by a red-headed lady who resembled May. Nick is taken aback by the information, and he begins to question if May was a criminal. Despite this, he continues to look for her until he is cornered inside an abandoned home and beaten severely. He threatens Nick with murder the next time he doesn't forget about May. Nick returns to his workplace after the incident and quickly rewatches his memory for answers. On closer study, he realizes that the assailant is the same crooked officer who worked for St. Joe, Cyrus. Nick and Emily run to the police station to learn more about him, but they are halted by a large throng gathering outside. Sylvan, the town's richest merchant, has lately died, it turns out. His bereaved wife, Tamara, and their son, Sebastian, are currently being dragged away. Nick knows Tamara as a past client of the reminiscence tank the moment he meets her. So he rushes to his office and starts playing her recollection of dancing with her husband, Sylvan. Following that, he plays Elsa's recollection, who is enjoying her time with her wealthy lover. When Nick examines the two films, he notices a similarity in the man's voice, confirming Elsa's affair with none other than Sylvan. Freddie was also born as a result of their clandestine connection. Nick deduces from 2 and 2 that Sylvan's second son, Sebastian, paid Cyrus to murder Elsa and her kid. His major motivation is to be the only heir to his father's money. After learning of all of this, Nick decides to investigate more, so he leaves his workplace armed with a revolver. In the next scene, an enraged Nick arrives to Tamara's house. She lives in Miami's most affluent neighborhood, where excess is still prevalent. Surprisingly, Nick is mistaken for a dancer who has been summoned to perform in a show. He does not resist, however, because this may be his greatest chance to obtain answers. Soon after, he encounters Tamara and confronts her violently about May and Elsa. Tamara, who has lost most of her memory as a result of despair, confesses that May and Cyrus were working on something together. She also appears to be aware of her husband's romance with Elsa. Unfortunately, before Tamara can share additional information, Sebastian enters and asks for security, believing Nick is bothering his mother. The guards finally evict him, but they also help him by divulging Cyrus' whereabouts. They, too, are fed up with the crooked officer and want him dead. Following that, Nick visits the mentioned spot and finds a lady who resembles May. He eagerly pursues her, but instead finds Cyrus waiting for him. He's singing a song that reminds Nick of his first encounter with May. Cyrus then discloses that Nick's encounter with May was pre-planned. Her main mission was to manipulate Nick, utilize the memory tank, and take Elsa's chip, which had memories of her doing the same thing with Sylvan. Cyrus runs from a neighboring window as he says this, and Nick pursues him. There, the two engage in a scuffle that goes back and forth for a bit. They battle in the hot heat as well as beneath water. In the end, it is our valiant protagonist who triumphs. He then knocks Cyrus unconscious, drags him to his office, and places him in the memory tank. May's relationship with Nick was constructed on a falsehood, according to the dishonest cop's memories. She worked with Cyrus and claimed to be interested in Nick in order to carry out a plan. She even met several of his friends in order to get to know him better and gain his trust. Nick is taken aback by the discovery, since he had considered her to be his soulmate for months. However, it is revealed in another recollection that Cyrus was the one who murdered Elsa. May observed everything, so she and Freddie left to an unknown area. When Nick inquires about his most recent contact with May, Cyrus recalls his memories and demonstrates that he met her outside Nick's office when she knocked on the door. May dropped one of her earrings as he hauled her away from there. Nick demands to know what he did to her, and Cyrus recalls beating her. He also got her to give up Freddy's whereabouts by drugging her with something. Surprisingly, May appears on the hologram and communicates with Nick via Cyrus' memories. She conveys her feelings for him while also implying where Freddy is. She had always suspected Nick would apprehend Cyrus, which is why she had left a hidden note for him. Unfortunately, Nick learns in the last recollection that May did the unimaginable when the strain grew too much for her. Nick, who is devastated by her death, resolves to exact his revenge. He instructs Cyrus to recall his darkest moment and pushes him to experience it over and over. The recollection depicts St. Joe's soldiers burning Cyrus' face as punishment for stealing riches. However, this is insufficient for Nick, so he raises the voltage of Nick's horrible memories and abandons him in the water tank. Following this, Nick proceeds to Sylvan's house and confronts Sebastian about killing Elsa for the sake of his father's fortune. He also admits that he is aware of his father's involvement with Elsa. Sebastian, enraged and surprised, attempts to shoot Nick but, despite his best efforts, is unable to do so. Finally, he pulls the trigger on himself and prepares to perform the unimaginable. However, just as things are about to become bloody, his mother arrives and calms him down. After the problem has been handled, Nick visits Emily and confesses to his misdeeds, explaining the full narrative of May, Cyrus, and their twisted web of deception. He claims that life is short, thus Emily should return to her family and live with them. In his dying moments, Nick enters the memory tank, hooks himself to the cables, and prepares for the remembrance process to begin on him. Soon after, we witness him reliving his memories with May, during which the two express their love for one another before dying away peacefully. Years later, Emily pays a visit to Nick at the memory tank with her daughter and sends him flowers. The film concludes with the idea that, while dwelling in the past might be perilous, recreating recollections of happier times can help one find peace in the present.